Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Immortal Great Souls, Book 2, The Rascor Plains, chapters 55 through 58. I happened to see, as I was reading, that after chapter 58 is an interlude from Dameon's perspective. But I couldn't read it. I had to stop, because Dan is a mean, cruel, terrible man. So yeah, this intro isn't about the chapters I read, it's about me being a pouty bitch. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to evil, mean, cruel, terrible man, Dan, for commissioning this episode. You guys, this was so agonizing, these 3 chapters, because our guys get so close, and they are not able to fully seal the deal. And then on top of that, we get a moment with Jova, in which it turns out, it seems like Jova did know the whole deal and is okay with it. Disappointed is not the word. Disgusted isn't the word. The profound shift in the way I see Jova as a person. I was giving her so much fucking grace. I really was. Because the thing that it's difficult to sort of wrap your head around, and there is a question as to how far this is actually true. But something that I keep trying to remind myself of with these characters is that despite the fact that they all look like they're, I'm assuming, in their early 20s, they were all basically like born 2 years ago, right? Now they are full grown with the reasoning capabilities of an adult, but it is a bit of like a mind fuck to be reborn with this whole history behind you that you don't know, that other people are going to have read about you and know about you, and you're coming into it, and you're also having to sort of learn everything as if for the first time. And I can't help but be compassionate in this scenario because it is so bizarre. And just going through life in the normal way, it is very fraught, and how we see ourselves and how other people see us and the ways in which that influences how we behave and our decisions is so completely interconnected and complex that adding in having lived multiple lives and people knowing your name for things that you have no memory of, or a version of you that's out there that made different decisions than the ones you did now. There is so much happening there that I really do try and have a little bit of, like, give people room, where the fact that she was being flattered, and it was very clearly, like, tactical, but she was being flattered the way that she was. And of course she was, because, like, she is so notorious in terms of her abilities that they're going to do and say whatever they can, right, to keep her. And I, as a person who has a lot of pride and ego and has gone through some shit where I have been forced to really look at that and how my pride and ego has influenced me to do things that were profoundly selfish that I never would have thought I would do in a vacuum, but it turns out I am capable of if circumstances are correct. I understand how that happens. There will come a point, I think, in everybody's life where they're going to do something that they step back from and kind of go, I really never thought I was going to be this person. Oh my God. And you've got to decide, are you going to try and shift what you are like to keep this from happening? Or are you just going to sort of treat it as if it's an inevitability and lean into it? And I have tried to shift away from it, and I think successfully in large part. It's an ongoing process, obviously. But I'm so sorry, guys. Dan in the chat says she milkshake ducked herself. I don't. I'm not entirely sure if it's like because of the past lives thing. I see what you're saying, Dan, and I'm not even like really saying it's wrong, but it is just so complex because the thing that I keep running up against is how controlled information seems to be in this world. And I don't know how many times she has been played in the past and if she has figured out a way around that. Like, is there a way for her to find out about the whole thing with her and Scorio and there being a link between them to find their way through and discover things allegedly together? She has this like thing that she says to him that one time about how like I thought you and I that we would blah blah blah, and implying that there was some sort of romantic connection there. There's just so much about their relationship that it feels was explicitly omitted from a lot of the information that other people have due to the fact that they are working together to find things out that they aren't supposed to know. So anyway, I'm so sorry, guys. I feel like I'm all over the place, but I, long story short, have been really trying to give her grace and understand, while still being disappointed, understand how it could happen that you could be seduced by people and like led to believe something that I really felt if she were lied to, that there was a good chance she knew in her heart she was being lied to. And she was telling herself a story to make it okay because she liked what she was getting out of the deal. Because this is just human nature. We want to believe a certain thing. And even when certain events occur that don't align with what we want to believe, we still find a way to like rationalize why that technically supports our theory, actually. Like, it's just wild, the shit we do. So even though it would suck, I was very willing to forgive the fact that she had been seduced and lied to, but asterisk because mostly it's her lying to herself. And now it's looking like she straight up knew. And I will be honest, I am still holding on to this hope that maybe she doesn't fully still know. Like the conversation that she and Scorio have, he is literally hanging on to her in midair and they have like seconds before shit falls apart. It's not as if they get a heart to heart over a cup of coffee and get to really hash things out. So the details that we get are nil, but it doesn't sound like she is trying to deny betrayal. That's the word he uses. When he says betrayal, she doesn't argue. She just explains why she did it. And that's the part that I'm really hung up on, and that's poking holes in my little like inflated life raft of maybe Jova is still redeemable. It's just I just wanted so much more from her. And you know what I think too? I think that this is part of it. You guys remember how early on I was starting to put my theory together about the ways in which Jova and Scorio would like find each other and work together, because she is somebody who is very by the book and like work driven, and how this would like, because they're aligned in that way, they would sort of wind up, on the same side of things, and that it made sense that he had her name in his locker, all this stuff. And so when they get together, supposedly at the end of the last book, it all felt very in line with my expectation of what was going to happen. So I think part of me just being like, this can't be true, is that that whole setup feels like we're just not doing anything with that. And I'm not saying this in terms of it being bad writing. Actually, it's kind of great writing, because it's setting up a trope of like, oh, the person that doesn't like you, now you're on the same team. And then being like, well, are you? I actually sort of love the fact that I had this whole expectation that's been dashed. That's delightful. But I think that's part of where my like denial is coming from, is just, but the trope. Wait, come back. Like we're just flying past the trope on a high speed train, and I'm watching it recede in the distance going, wait. Homer Simpson chasing the barbecue pig going, it's still good. It's still good. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, I also am just blown away by the fact that she is like, I know I'm jumping like to the end of these 3 chapters, but oh well, it's my show. I get to do what I want. She actually says to Scorio that the reason she betrayed them is because Dameon promised answers, and she says to Scorio, you were a disappointment. Which is so fucking funny. It is so funny. It's just after the last conversation they had, where he has slaved for 5 months doing backbreaking labor, and she tells him that he's afraid of hard work, to then her having betrayed him and his friends and gotten those 2 killed, and telling him he's a disappointment. It is fucking unbelievable. Like, girl, please, a mirror, somebody. Hold it up and have her really look at it, because they've smeared Vaseline on it. She's not getting the real picture. But top that off with the fact that when she says Dameon promised answers and Scorio says, did he deliver? She gets a look on her face that clearly says he did not. Congratulations, you played yourself, and you know you played yourself, and this is pathetic. Okay? Pathetic. What is the matter with you? And lastly, on this list of absolute goofy behavior, is the fact that I had really thought how hard a worker she was the fact that she, like, that pointed to her being a real rule follower. And I've really thought that this whole time. But the fact that she was willing to betray them proves that she is not the rule follower that I really thought she was. She was following the rules within a system that benefited her so much, and she had no real concept of how much it was like geared toward benefiting her specifically. She was essentially operating with an obscene amount of privilege that she seemed to genuinely be kind of unconscious of or feel was truly deserved. And once that system that was in place at the school was gone, and she winds up like on the plains or up against Evelyn and not able to hold her own the way that she has been able to just absolutely spank people at her own school, she gets a little bit up in her feelings. And then she gets talked into things with Manticore after the fact, being told how great she is and advancing before everybody. And like, what happened was she got humbled, and then she got like offered a way out of that valley of humiliation, and she took it. So she's actually, despite being a really hard worker, it's like she's a hard worker in a scenario where she knows for sure that that work will pay off and be rewarded. Whereas Scorio is a hard worker where he is just hoping it will pay off and be rewarded, and he doesn't have any guarantees of that. she has a certain amount of guarantee. And she has people who already remember who she was and are willing to back her and give like basically insurance to that guarantee. So honestly, her version of hard work I find to be less valuable because it is all based on her doing things that she is like there's no doubt that she will be successful on the other end. So there isn't really as much of a challenge. She just has to push and get through it. Whereas Scorio and Naomi, they both have to push and they aren't really sure if things like what they are pushing is so much more hazardous that it could actually cost them their lives before they do succeed. And I don't get the feeling that Jova has ever really been in danger of that. She has been in mortal peril, but for reasons other than trying to advance. So it's just wild because, like, the way that she is operating, she's on. It's like when you play a brand new phone game. Anybody out there who plays phone games, you know what I'm talking about. You open your game. This is what happened to me the first time I ever played Candy Crush. I still remember it because I was suddenly like, oh, that's privilege. It was like a perfect little metaphor. I opened Candy Crush, and when you're brand new, you don't have any ads that to like get new gems. You get a bunch of boosters right away. The first like 40 or 50 levels are super, super easy, and they get you into this like quick serotonin burst of advancing on the map really easily. You solve puzzles in nothing flat because you have so many little additional boosters that help a lot more than you think they're helping at the time. And they get you really hooked in. And then finally, after you've played like a week, they are confident that they have you now, which they fucking do, and they stop giving you those boosters and the puzzles start to get harder, and now you can't beat it in one try or even four tries and you're running out of lives. And now you have like you earned a booster, but you used it up right away and it was only one booster, not the 11 that you're accustomed to, and you're sort of like, well, what the fuck? And you thought because you were competing against other people playing the game and you were always winning that like weekly competition, you were like, I am killing this game. I am so good at this game because you were number one all the time. And then when all that is taken away, all of a sudden you're dropping down to third and fourth on that little leaderboard and you're getting a reality check. And it's like she had this happen, and then somebody came around that was saying, I can give you boosters. We have like actually 3 hours worth of unlimited lives that you could have every day if you want. And she just fucking went for it because the person who's actually afraid of hard work, I think, is her. She works and she pushes herself, but hard work, is it? When you are guaranteed to succeed? I don't know, man. It's not to say I wasn't playing Candy Crush. I was playing, but it was practically playing itself, and I was there, like. So anyway, I know that's like kind of a weird analogy to make, but it was just something that really I literally said out loud to Owen after I was playing the game for a few days, I kick ass at this game. I literally said those words, and you don't know how humbled I was a few days later as I began to realize I do not kick ass at this game. I am reasonable at this game. In fact, I was just being given the shiny gold plated welcome wagon, and I didn't realize how important that was. So, all right, let's back this fucking up a little bit. Oh, Dan is in the chat still. One of the things I find fascinating about this series is how the idea of a culture built around actual resurrections would develop. Yeah, I'm really interested in finding out more about this because I feel like that is being held back on a lot. And I think it has to be on purpose because there's certain information in there that the part that I keep running up against that I find so strange is how some people seem to have like lots of information about their previous selves and others don't. And if you were resurrected several times, wouldn't you start to create data for yourself to come back to? And if it's not there, did you really just not put any time or effort into doing that, or was it removed somehow? The fact that Scorio's locker is empty, I mean, somebody did something, you know? Phil is really, really good about subverting tropes and reader expectations in this series. He just does it over and over again. Indeed. And this analogy is incredible. I hope that you mean incredible in terms of like accurate and not incredible like, wow, you tried something. All right. So, chapter 55. I love you guys that I predicted this and I was right. Naomi is so irritated that he was tempered in gold. She was like, I felt like I was the shit for tempering in silver. I thought I was really doing something. And of course, you have to show up tempered in gold. What the fuck? It's not fair. Um, and she starts to just like beat the hell out of him. Like she does the equivalent of picking up a 4x4, like, you know, one of those thick pieces that you would build a deck on, like a pillar, and just like bashing him with it and seeing and it doesn't do anything, but he's sort of like, well, what the fuck? And she's like, oh, shut up. I love that when the board that breaks, it says, ow, said Scorio, more out of a sense of obligation. It's not even like a real ow. It's a ow, I think. That's what I'm supposed to say, right? Yeah. Ow. Definitely. For sure. Ow. Um Here it is. She slammed her knuckled fist into his sternum hard enough to lift him off the ground and slam him against the stone wall. Scorio bounced off and fell to the ground with a cry of shock and anger, but she'd immediately shifted back down to her human form and dropped into a crouch to watch him curiously. Anything broken? Nothing's broken, but what the hell? Don't be a baby. A punch from me should have shattered your chest. That's how you do your research. For your information, that hurt. No wonder you were able to go toe-to-toe with Davalos. I don't think you appreciate how incredible this is. Silver's impressive. Gold? Unheard of. Well, good, because we're hunting Dreadblazes. So this is when he explains to her that his heart is spherical. I said word because he starts to explain what the word spherical means to her when she asks what he means, and she's just like, you fucking asshole, that is, you know what I mean. And when she hears that it actually changed shape, she's genuinely like, that's a thing? I was not aware. So he says, I drain ambient mana while ignited, so I never run out of mana. And she's like, saying the same thing that Moira said. That's Pyre Lord. I love this. She sounded flat out disgusted. They can send out vortices that drain mana all around them, sending it directly to their hearts. Blood Barons and up can send them out ever farther so they can drink mana from ever larger areas. Well, I don't do that. I just cause mana to endlessly fall into my heart so my reservoir never runs dry. Ridiculous! You're going to teach me how that works. Sure, but we may need some Imperial jelly. It didn't make sense to me until I had Noxus Bath to help regulate the process. I don't even know how to explain it. I'll get in that disgusting slime pool if it allows me to manifest a Pyre Lord ability. And we'll need high-grade mana to infuse the pool. Whatever, we'll find it. My heart is powerful, but my reservoir is finite. You saw me run out of mana against Evelyn. Do you think I can learn it before we kill Praximar? I love her. I love her so much. Instantly, I am going to take it as given. We are killing Praximar, that this will happen soon, and therefore I need to prep now. And he's like, so we're really doing that? And she's like, yes. Everything that has happened is his fault. You know that. And he's like, do you really think that we can kill a Pyre Lord? And she says, yeah, I don't know how, but yeah, we'll figure it out. Scorio felt the rightness of that resolve. You know, it's funny. When things were going well for us, at least when I thought they were, it felt like I was losing my way. But now everything seems crystal clear. I feel calm, focused, resolved. I feel nothing but unrelenting hate and fury. Well, that too, but all of that emotion is like a storm raging outside my mind. Inside, I feel ready. Yeah, Naomi sighed. I know what you mean. Relieved, even. It's been a very long 2 years. On some level, I was able to lean on my experience being alone in the ruins, but this was worse. Back then, I'd always felt alone, but to have made friends and lost them, it made everything worse. You didn't lose all of them. No, I didn't. But I don't want to start crying again. So, they talk over what their plan is going to be. Um, and there is the thing brought up about whether Evelyn's lover saw him or recognized him. And he doesn't mention the thing about how this guy was likely not supposed to have been with Evelyn, but he does suggest the thing that I was wondering initially about, like maybe he just thought I was a fiend. Um, she's a Dreadblaze with excellent mobility powers. If she was alive, she'd have emerged from the chasm already. Mana isn't a problem down there. The fact that she's been gone for a day or two will tell Dameon all he needs to know, and the man's a bastard. He'll abandon her. So they'll load up and fly back on the whale ship to Azareth, then teleport to the Fiery Shoals. That's some 80 manticores. So Scorio is like, we could leave now and fly out past the Golden Circuit and wait for Azareth and approach from the interior. Naomi says, that sounds good. Sloop's small enough that we should be able to find a spot under the island to hide it. Then we crawl up onto the island proper and scope out the castle, observe it, and formulate the next step there. And this is what they end up doing. All she grabs is her water canister, because other than that, she's just got like a blanket that she's been sleeping under. It really reminded me of the way that Scorio was living in the ruins when he first, like, gets out of the pit he was thrown in. And he is able to use his technique so that he can just fly her on his back a lot of the time later as well. He doesn't run out of mana, and there comes a point where it's just the two of them, and she's so tiny when she's not transformed that she's like nestled up between his wings. And like I said, this is later because they're on the sloop at this point. But I really love the fact that he turns so big and she is so small that she basically can just ride on his back like Daenerys and Drogon. It's very fun to me. Um let's see. I'm trying to find the spot where we get here. Yeah, here it is. They dock the sloop, which gets a little damaged later on by some of the stalactites. I never remember which are the ones that come from the ceiling versus the floor. Um, when night fell, Naomi inched closer, so they sat shoulder to shoulder, hip to hip, and both kept their gaze trained on the murky distance. One of them remained always on watch through the cycles that followed, while the other either hunted or did exercises below. Scoria was working his way through one of the forms one dusk when Naomi called down softly to him. So, I just want to mention, you guys, the amount of time that they spend in silence through these chapters. This is something that I don't want to say that there's like one test that you can use to see whether or not people are good for each other, and if they pass that, then they're the one. But there is really something to be said for a person who understands so innately what you want to do that you don't need to tell them or explain anything, and they simply also want that same thing. And so you sit next to them and both go quiet and both keep watch in the same way with no discussion because you are on the same page in a way that is beyond needing to communicate out loud. Not that they don't also communicate out loud, but you know what I'm saying. There is just such they are so synced up with one another that I find it really touching in a weird way, even when that being in sync is about killing their enemies. It's like, I don't know. I just really love this for the two of them. Ooh, Ms. T says stalagmite has a T or has a G and comes up from the ground. Stalactite has a C and comes down from the ceiling. Miss T. Oh, that's gonna work. That's gonna make me remember. I appreciate you so much. Okay, so they sailed silently in the growing wind. Azareth was indeed massive, a molar of gray, scabrous rock whose uneven plateau was drenched in greenery. Um, the sloop rose on a cushion of mana, drawing perilously close to the aureate curtain and rising into the great stalactites that hung like inverted peaks from the island's underside. So, they dock, and yeah, she says it'll keep it in place, but there's no preventing it getting beaten up. We'll have to be quick so it doesn't get too badly battered. And the poor thing does go through it. Eventually, it's a loss. Um, so they make their way up, and they are watching and seeing how many people there are on guard patrol. And it definitely has been beefed up some. Scorio is like, oh God, they fucking like know something is coming, don't they? And she's like, yeah, well, don't be surprised. What Dameon's power is, like, I'm sure he can sense that there is a threat, but they just don't know what to even look for. By the time he figures it out, fuck him. So Scorio is like, yeah, I just don't like them being readied at all. But nothing to be done. So, uh, you want to infiltrate while he's gone, claim a hidden spot, and wait for him? Or we could descend on the tower from above once he's arrived. Though once he hears Evelyn was killed by a flying fiend, he might double the number of guards. The guards will be less attentive with Dameon gone, possibly. And this is when first of all, fucking Scorio floats for an instant. A formal challenge, him against the both of us. And I was so glad that that is immediately followed up with, sorry, stupid idea. There's no reason to trust him. Thank you. I'm so, sir. Oh, the mere idea, bruh. So then Naomi says, or we try to kill everyone now. We've possibly a day in which to assassinate them all. I doubt they can leave the island, and everyone will be a flame vault or lower. 35 great souls? We take out the sentries first, then attack isolated groups. I fill each building with my miasma. Don't worry, I can make it so it doesn't affect you. And then we descend from the top and kill everyone inside. You're serious? They're manticore, she shrugged. Most of them witnessed what happened 2 years ago, and the new recruits, bad choice on their part if they haven't realized yet whom they've decided to follow. All right, but say we do slaughter 35 great souls. The moment Dameon arrives with 40 more, he'll be immediately on the alert. Yes. And that would make it impossible to get at him. No, all right, forget the mass assassination plan. Good. Scorio gave her a look. I want to just touch on this for a second here. I genuinely don't give a shit if they kill all the manticores. Do they all deserve it? Maybe, maybe not. But you know what? People in this book, a lot of them don't deserve the things that they get. That doesn't seem to be a fucking factor to anybody. If they're great souls, they do reincarnate, so there's even less of like a feeling of the sanctity of life kind of conversation because they're coming back, so who cares? And setting all that aside, what is the difference between swooping down on them here and killing them all versus getting into a fight and them suddenly turning into enemies? It's like you turn a corner and now it's okay to kill them all. Well, you know that they are loyal to Manticore and that they would immediately attack you if they knew you were here anyway. I genuinely just, as much as I understand and respect the fact that Scorio seems a little bit horrified by her proposing this in such a cold-blooded way, I couldn't help but be like, Scorio, you laid out so many people when you were dealing with Davalos, and you weren't stopping to ask yourself if they deserved it. The only reason that you're worrying about it here is because the context of it feels a lot more cold-blooded and you're used to killing in a rage. I think that distinction is actually a little meaningless if you really stop and parse that at all. And I don't, again, the fact that everybody resurrects, it's very difficult for me to feel the kind of horror that I would about killing regular people. And there's also just, you know, this is a thing that I'm not accusing the series of doing this because I don't think that it is, but it's something that can come up a lot in like superhero stuff where it's like you have all of these minions that are just there to be killed and then you get to like the big bad and now all of a sudden it's like, well, if you kill me, you're as bad as I am. And it's like, why is killing this guy the significant life that you have to forgive and preserve in order to retain your humanity? You just slaughtered 25 of his goons on the way up here. Killing this one, his life isn't more important than theirs. In terms of the storytelling, it may be, but in terms of the way that things should actually work, no. And I've always been deeply infuriated by storylines where it's suddenly like, oh, well, now I have to like let go of my anger and allow him to be captured and taken prisoner instead of executing him. I don't have any patience for it, and this is something that has come up in Star Wars a lot where it's like, you've got all, especially after they decided that they were going to make it that all of the stormtroopers are fucking like clones or child soldiers that were like kidnapped, but they can just be poured into this meat grinder and it's nothing because they're anonymous white masks. And then you encounter Palpatine and suddenly we have to put our hands up and be like, oh, killing him would be a bridge too far. Excuse me? What are you talking about? Anyway, off on a tangent, as I often am. So, I just personally think that her plan was downright reasonable, actually. Um, so he says, let's get an aerial view at the night cycle and see what presents itself. So they study the castle and the donjon's top, and I realized as I was listening to this, I don't even know what that means. The great tower or innermost keep of a castle. Origin, Middle English, variant of dungeon, Oh, interesting. Okay, that's interesting. Um, The dungeon's top was an octagon, no trapdoor, but instead a flight of stone steps rising up a side, facing the castle's interior. Light shone through large cracks in its flagstones, and a section of stone had collapsed inwards, revealing the heavy latticework for new rafters. A pile of barrels and wooden debris. The sentry leaned against the parapet, gazing outward. A slender woman, tiny below them. Dawn was coming. Time to dive. So, this the way that this goes, there he dives, hears her laughing. They knifed down below the plateau's level just before dawn broke, and they hang out under the island for 4 more day cycles. Um, the ship approaches. They'd agreed to wait a single day cycle so Dameon could settle in. They dared not wait longer. Evelyn's disappearance could have prompted him to activate the teleportation to the fiery shoals ahead of schedule. So they waited in silence on the deck of their little sloop, resting, meditating, the air between them tense. But Scorio realized he wasn't afraid. He didn't care that 80 great souls were above, that the next night cycle could very well bring his death, for this was exactly where he wanted to be, and nothing more mattered than vengeance. Which is honestly so sad. Like I like this for him in as much as it's fun storytelling wise. I'm excited to see what he does when he's in this place, but it feels so bleak and sad. Um, and he keeps on like using the thought of his friends to sort of hype himself up and get himself angry again. Um, so he does the thing where he goes back up into the air, and then he has his rod that he is going to set and have the island bash into, which is such a cool idea. I really, really like this. And one of my favorite moments is that Naomi tells him to move the rod. And even though it doesn't seem right to him, he decides to trust her and go ahead and do what she says, which is just the kind of huge compliment that means so much to me as a person. I really can't express how much I am like touched by somebody who disagrees with me acquiescing to my judgment simply because they feel that I am trustworthy enough in my judgment that even when they don't feel like that seems right, they're gonna let me have it. Like, that's just really meaningful and something that you really have to earn over time with a person. And this moment just meant a lot to me. Um, so uh the whole thing, it's like moving, he's watching it and he's like, it's gonna miss, but it doesn't. The rod remained perfectly set in space, which meant the first block of stone exploded into fragments and splinters of rock as the entire tower rumbled on its foundations, its structural integrity growing increasingly compromised as the rod began to cut through its outer wall like a knife through cake. The roar was magnificent. Stone exploding, the huge wall buckling, the rod's progress remarkable. The tower top came rushing toward them. The sentries had all raced to the same side, there to peer down at the sound of shattering rock and chaos. So he has gone up while they are distracted. And then they go down through the roof, which just explodes like nothing. There's, it barely is anything against him being in his like demon form. Scorio had no time to react. The stone floor had mostly fallen away to reveal timbered rafters and ancient crates. He twisted violently aside to avoid the remaining flagstones and smashed into a second gap, pain flaring through his shoulder as he shattered a rafter and burst out into the main chamber below. The rod had already shattered half the far wall and was still going, tearing the wall apart as mortar crumbled, blocks exploded into fragments, and the lines of the huge room grew warped. I want to see this so bad. It's so difficult for me to picture the way that this would actually work and the progress of it. And I feel like he leaves and doesn't take the rod when he leaves, which I may have missed the point where he grabs it again, but if he doesn't have it anymore, I'm genuinely like a little devastated over it. So Dameon laughs when he sees him, which the fucking gall, like you want Dameon to be shaking in his boots and he isn't at all. He's just like, no shit. And that's not the reaction that I want at all. Ah, God, I hate this guy so much. So, the tower's going to fall, barked Jova. A force field snapped up around Dameon, gleaming like a bubble. You look upset, Scorio. Want to talk about it? I knew I didn't like this guy. I fucking knew I didn't like this guy. I liked him. You remember I liked him. But also, I didn't like the fact that I liked him. It was like I respect how good you are at faking it. Was really the way it was. And now that respect has turned around into the way that you fake it is too good. It's dangerous. Fuck off. um So I'm gonna have to like speed through some of this because it's a lot of sound and fury. It is not signifying nothing, it's signifying a significant amount actually. And the fact that there's a lot of stone and Jova's ability is about controlling rock does seem unfortunate. um and the fact that he is just screaming die as he is attacking Dameon. There was something about this that I was like, dude, I get you being like vengeful, but this attitude here of you sort of losing it and just, this isn't the way you're going to win. And Dameon just says that a request in response. Oh my God. There is nothing more infuriating when you are in a towering rage than the person you are directing that rage at not taking you seriously at all. And I'm not trying to say that Dameon doesn't actually see Scorio as a threat. I think that Dameon knows treating Scorio this way is what's going to get at him. And he understands that Scorio's trigger and his weakness is his temper. So he's doing this purposely because like the thing about Dameon that made him such a great manager in like the first scene we saw him in is that he really does seem to understand people and the like desires that they have kind of quickly, and he is able to manipulate that with like an ease that is frankly very scary. So if that's true, he has been using it to get people on his side and believing him. But here, I think he is trying to just poke and prod Scorio, and it's working, but it also works on me because I have been this person getting super angry at somebody who is literally laughing in my face in response because they don't see the big deal. And it made me want to commit homicide. And I am not the kind of person that is out here just like starting fights. But it was the sort of thing that my hands twitched in like I almost just slapped you in the face because of the way that you just reacted to me. So yeah, Scorio, bruh, you need to figure out a way through this rage because people know this about you, dude, and they are gonna be able to start using this in a way that's gonna unless you manage it and start to master this, it's going to be a problem. Um, so Jova raises both hands and screams, and the whole building slows as it's beginning to tip. And Scorio is looking at this like she is managing the entire tower and is genuinely like, this is insane. She can do this? What the fact? What the fuck? Um the cyclone of stone, Jova at its center, she turned her burning eyes upon them both. You should have stayed dead. So he flung up his shroud. They thundered into its great curvature. The donjon collapsed behind them, Jova's control finally faltering. Was she dead, entombed? The rocks rumbled, shook, shifted apart, revealed Jova, eyes still burning white, as she strode slowly from the center of the ruin, blocks rolling aside and opening a path for her. So it was at this moment, with her eyes being white, that I suddenly realized a lot of the descriptions of Jova remind me now of like the version of Storm where she has a mohawk. So that is now who I'm picturing. And because Storm has a lot of iterations, but that is the energy that Jova gives in this scene for me, is just like this elemental. And that is, guys, she's so cool. I really hate it. Come on. Be on our side, Jova. What the fuck? I don't like when you're on the other side. It stinks. Oh, God. Okay. So they start to come at her realizing that everything she just did used a lot of her power, and she's probably weakened significantly after doing all of that, which is a great thing to keep in mind because it's so easy to be overwhelmed with how impressive it is what somebody just did that you think they can just keep doing that, and reminding yourself that like, no, actually that caused their like endurance bar to drop to like 20%. That's a good thing to keep in mind. Um, so she uses her like horrifying ability, and he says stop with his like mental command. To his surprise, the monstrous image disappeared, revealing an equally stunned Jova. And I can't tell you guys like how fascinating I found it. That so many of the things that he has tried against her don't work, but this does. And it just to me seems to really indicate her like susceptibility to influence. And I may be reading way too much into it. But I don't know, man. I don't know. Because later on it turns out to be a whole thing again. Naomi's eyes, meanwhile, are this like green and she's out here doing somersaults. Um Scorio charged Jova's flank. Syndra, Dameon grinned as he searched the crowd. Someone fetch Syndra, the teleporter. Grinning, this man. Oh my god, I want him crushed to dust. Scoria tries drop the shield on Dameon, and it impacts him clearly, but he doesn't acquiesce to it. So the longer she remained in this area, the more menacing she became. This is the Nightmare Lady. Gaunter, taller, her tail longer, an air of horrific mastery just burning off her skeletal frame. She flitted from shadow to shadow as if they were connected by invisible tunnels, evading attacks only to appear behind their foes. 5 great souls had joined the fight, only to be beaten back by her thrashing tails, each trying to pin her down with a combination of long and short range attacks. So the force field shatters. Jova hurls stone. Scorio leaps to the Nightmare Lady's side and uses his shroud to, like, protect the both of them. Um, Scorio looked around. Dameon was sprinting toward the courtyard exit. Stop! He mentally roared at Jova again, who grunted as the last of the blocks fell from the sky. She flew up higher, as if seeking to escape the range of his power. So, long story short, Dameon is able to get away. This killed me, you guys. It really did. I hated this so much. And there's this moment, this dude is coming at him. Scorio placed his shroud between them, and when the youth went to swing at it, blasted him with his command aura. Fall. To the man's obvious confusion, he complied. Jova was high and far back, fighting to keep out of range. It was time to finish this. Dameon! Shouted Scorio. It was now or never. Attack me, Scorio commanded, and Jova, already so inclined, complied. A storm of stones flew past him to impact the force field. They shattered, bounced, ricocheted off. The Nightmare Lady appeared, falling upon the force field with her claws and tail. And eventually it shatters. The Nightmare Lady hit the ground just beside Dameon. Scorio leaped at him, claws outstretched. To Bastion! Dameon screamed. Syndra flared gold, brighter than the fleeting sun, brighter than the sun wire at Amber, and the pair of them disappeared. Ugh. Hate this. So, they get onto the sloop, which is fucked up. And we have this chase that begins to really tear the ship apart. They don't realize that they are being pursued initially. I think that their assumption was like, if we get away, they are going to be busy trying to, like, fix the damage. But they underestimate how pissed off Jova is, and the fact that probably in the absence of Dameon, she's in charge now. So eventually they see the ship that is pursuing them, and somebody jumps off. Now, what it turns out is happening is that this is Jova using her ability to control stones to fly separately and faster than the ship. But what I thought was that people were jumping off using their ability to keep themselves safe in order to lighten the load on the ship that was pursuing. So I had the total wrong idea about what was happening here. So they hit the rain wall, and they, like, this is their means of trying to lose Jova. Steer for iron. What? Where are you? No. Scorio took 6 long steps, leaped out onto the stern railing, and dove into the storm. I loved this for him because he wanted to do this so bad that one time and was just like, where did that come from? And now he's sort of getting to. So he comes toward her, and I don't know how aware she was about, like, his abilities with flight. She's seen him flying, but the control that he has, you know what I'm saying? So it seems like she's reacting a bit to that here. And she's crashing through while he is laughing because he is really enjoying himself. He skimmed just beneath her boots, jump off. Jova screamed in fury and did so, leaving her slab behind to plunge back first into the storm. He saw her slab catch itself and fling itself down after her. He saw her rise from the depths, her face a mask of fury. And eventually, her heart gutters and goes out. I didn't expect this to be so pathetic when it happened, but there it is. He grabs her wrist to stop her, and she says, "What are you doing?" She'd fall, be broken, only to heal. Such was her gift. Why? Why'd you betray us? Dameon promised answers. Decisive action. You were a disappointment. Has he delivered? Jova's eyes widened in anger, bitterness, and in her glare he saw his answer. But then she yanked her arm free and was gone, swallowed up by the storm. I am wondering if the fact that he grabbed her and tried to like stop her, even though she would have been okay, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe she knows that he just did this because he wanted to ask questions while she was helpless, and that was really, this wasn't about saving her. I just want her to be on our side so bad. So, um, he also has the thought, did she hate him for falling for Dameon's ploy? Had his weakness been permission for her betrayal? Which was a really interesting idea. And considering the way that Moira told him, nobody gives a shit about whether you're a good person. They give a shit about whether you were stupid enough to be fucking tricked. And is that what's happening here? Is Jova really so much like the general populace? I had hoped not, but maybe she is. Um, so they get to the ash belt, and this is when they have let go of the sloop. She is on his back. And I'm trying to find that. Here it is. Naomi was a quiet passenger. She shifted her weight occasionally upon his scaled back and a few times relaxed into sleep, her limbs hanging loose about his torso, cheek between his shoulder blades. He drew a deep comfort from her presence, from her utter trust in his keeping her safe. You guys, I love this so much. This bitch is so confident in him that she falls asleep on his back. Like, do you remember Naomi of old? She would never. Being asleep around him, like, this is the ultimate to me. They're in such a precarious, but she's literally in the air. That means a lot. Um, so this is when they finally, like, she wakes up and is like, what are we doing here? What's the next plan? And he mentions Ravenna. Oh, right. I forgot about your connection. It lasted all of what, one night? Please, please, Scorio, tell her that you didn't fuck Ravenna because she clearly thinks you did. And she needs to hear that that did not happen. Now, even if it had happened, Naomi doesn't get to be mad because you haven't initiated anything with Scorio. You guys don't have that like relationship right now. But I like Naomi and I want her to be less upset. So I want him to tell her like that's not what's happening here, you know? Um so we'll go to ground in the ruins, find a way to contact Ravenna. I might walk around the Narrows and get information. You know, at first I found your impossible optimism aggravating. What was more infuriating was I couldn't beat it out of you. Since then, you've not only continued to defy the odds, but you've survived and succeeded at almost every turn. I consider Praximar and Dameon both as good as dead. I'm honored. You know, girl, same, same. So when she's asking, like, how are we going to get in? He's like, well, I'm flying, aren't I? And she's like, we're just going to. And he says, well, Imogen the Woe did it. And she's like, yes. So he's like, yeah, let's just fucking fly straight down along the sun wire. And by the time they react, we'll be like past them and hidden. Better than attempting on foot. So that's what they do. This is so fucking fun, you guys. um, hold on, here we go. Look out, scan the skies. Several saw him at once blowing whistles. I can't tell you how hilarious it is to me that this man, who is like looking like a fucking straight demon, the first line of defense is a bunch of guys with whistles. It just feels a little inadequate. That's all I'm saying. Oh, God. Anyway, so they're getting attacked with light. Um, and it is extremely like there's somebody who attacks them with light when they are on the ship earlier as well. And it passes them, but it is so hot that it actually dries the saliva out of his mouth, which is really scary, especially considering like his ability having so much involvement with heat that, you know what I mean? Um, but anyway, he began to fall not down, but to the side, his wings shifting intuitively to catch the new plane upon which he soared, and the side of the cylinder became the city below him over which he flew hundreds of yards up, streets and avenues, row houses and mansions, squares and fountains, grand domes and narrow alleys. The Sunwire's brilliance was scorching hot, but the closer he got, the more rapidly the city revolved beneath them. His lateral swoop as he flew deeper, needing to traverse less sky so that far below them wards spun by faster than a man could sprint. Good idea. Make it so they can't track us through the air. Bastion overwhelmed his senses. Word had to have spread, for several great souls rose into the air behind them, only to be left behind as Scorio rotated around the Sunwire. One left a trail of white fire behind them as they flew. Another was stood along the burning blade of a sword, 4 yards in length, while a third seemed to fling herself into the air, begin to fall, catch herself again, and hurl herself on a new trajectory once more, which sounds deeply uncomfortable. That sounds terrible. Like, I don't know. That one just it didn't appeal. I don't know. Maybe there's something to it that would make it feel less awful if I understood how it worked. Um, so they burst into the ruins, and let's see, not that building, it's freestanding. This one we can move deeper from within. Naomi darted across the street and dove into a dark doorway. They reached a back wall, but Naomi shifted into the Nightmare Lady and slammed her shoulder into its warped surface, breaking through into a room beyond, blocks of stone rolling free as the ceiling groaned. Eventually, they found an opening to an extensive basement. The Nightmare Lady went to climb down, but Scorio laughed, grew his wings, and leaped so as to close his clawed feet over her shoulders. She let out an uncharacteristic yelp of surprise as he glided down into the depths past ledges on which spiky, heavily shelled fiends watched them with burning eyes on extended eye stalks. Scorio turned into an open cavern a good 80 yards below the surface of the city and released the Nightmare Lady, who landed neatly as he dropped to the cavern floor beside her. They both turned back to the chasm and listened intently. Silence. Guess we gave him the slip. They must be flying in circles above the ruins. Doesn't mean we're safe. Fiends infest these lower levels. Really? Tell me more. Maybe start with the final door, then tell me about the labyrinth. You've made your point. Oh, good. You're on watch. I need to sleep. Just give me, I don't know, 30 or 40 cycles. We're in Bastion. Each cycle down here is a full day. I know. Just 30 or 40 should do. And then, more comfortable than he'd ever been in his life, he sank into an oblivion of pure exhaustion and slept. I love that line. More comfortable than he'd ever been in his life. There is nothing like being truly tired for laying down and feeling like you have instantly found the most comfortable position you're going to find. Like, it's difficult to get to yourself to the place where you're that tired, but the kind of rest that you end up getting, it's like almost worth it. And that's where I had to stop. That's where I had to stop, even though the next is interlude Dameon. I am absolutely dying. You guys don't know how hard it was to stop. You don't even understand. Ugh. Ugh. All right. I'm over time. I got to wrap it up. But thank you, Dan, again. But also, no thank you, and I hate you. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Unspoiled Network podcast.